welcome back. So now let's try to understand what we are going to cover as part of our day 2. Let's quickly go through the agenda. So we are going to first discuss what is the approach for our lab exercises. We are going to do a bunch of lab exercises in our upcoming classes. So we need to have very clear understanding what is the problem we are trying to solve. And then we will also pick up a very simple use case. So if you remember, we discussed about how you can implement CI/CD for agile team where they don't have much automation in place, right? So we are going to quickly, review the diagram, and then we'll try to understand how you can implement CI/CD for the team. And then we'll also discuss how you can put together a CI/CD process flow diagram. And then we will go ahead and set up our CI server, which is nothing but Jenkins in AWS cloud. All right. So for that, obviously we need to have, AWS account set up. So we will create a user in AWS cloud, and then we will log in using that user in AWS console. And then we'll also discuss some housekeeping related stuff related to AWS account as well. And then we will go ahead and then create 2 EC2 instances, like I mentioned, one for setting up Jenkins on one EC2 instance, and then one EC2 instance for setting up Tomcat. So Tomcat is a web server. So we'll also talk about that as well. So that is exactly what we are going to cover as part of day 2 learning. So what are you waiting for, guys? So now let's go ahead and then get started. So now let's talk about our approach for the lab exercises, right? So like I said, in our previous class, so we discussed about this diagram, right? So assume that you got a job as a DevOps engineer. You started working with a team where they are practicing agile, but they don't have any automation in place. And then as a DevOps engineer, how you can bring CI/CD, right, for that agile team. So that is exactly what we are going to implement. So we are going to do a lot of lab exercise in order to implement CI and CD. For that, we have to set up Jenkins server. So let's try to understand, right? So now, how you can implement CI/CD for this particular team. So this is a solution, right? So this is a CI/CD process flow diagram, isn't it? So if you see here, the major difference between this diagram and then this diagram is, you have set up CI server over here. So if you see here, there is no CI server over here, right? So everything was done manually. The build was done manually, deployment was done manually, right? All the code quality check, everything was done manually. There's no proper code quality tool, configured and so on, right? So we are going to solve that problem by setting up our CI server, right? So which is nothing but continuous integration. And then we will also go ahead and then implement continuous delivery as well. So first, let's start with the CI, and then we will implement CD later on. So now what is CI? So CI stands for continuous integration. So as soon as code is committed by developers into a common repository, so you have this automated build running, right? So you are going to check out the code, start building the code, and then integrate various code quality tool in order to identify bugs earlier in the software development lifecycle, right? So that is the goal of your CI. So we are also kind of implementing shift left testing, right? So yeah, so that is the great thing about CI. And then what is CD? CD generally stands for continuous delivery. So once you have your deployable code ready, you can go ahead and then, deploy into higher environment, right? With a semi-automated process. Okay. So that is what we call continuous delivery. So we are going to first implement this entire diagram, but again, we are not going to implement everything, in 1 or 2 sessions. So we are going to do it in over the period of many sessions. So the first thing what we are going to do is we are going to create 2 EC2 instances, one for setting up Jenkins, okay, and then another EC2 instance for setting up Tomcat, because we are going to pick up a Java project in GitHub, which we may do in the next, next day, okay, maybe part of day 3, where we are going to set up a Java project and then configure the Java project in GitHub, and then we will try to implement CI for the Java project, right? But even before that, we need to have our initial infrastructure configured. So now let's go ahead and then create these two EC2 instances in AWS cloud. I hope this was clear. So now let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to quickly, show you guys how you can log in into AWS cloud. So I assume each and every one of you already have AWS account configured. Okay, but I wanted to show you real quick, how we can create a user in AWS cloud, and then we can start using that user account. Instead of using root user account, let's go ahead and then, set up a separate user for our lab exercise. So basically guys, so this is my AWS console. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you how you can create a user account. So for that, you have to go to IAM. You can also click on here, or you can also type IAM here. Okay, and then go to users. I already have one user, but let me quickly show you how you can create one more user. So let me call this as a demo user. And then obviously I want to give this demo user full access. I want to give this demo user access to AWS console. So let's give demo user AWS management console access. So click on this one. And then I want to create a IAM user. And then, yeah, so auto-generated password is fine. So whenever this user is created, there will be auto-generated password. Okay. Or if you want to give a custom password, you can also do that as well. But the very important thing is you need to, select this one. I think this is already selected, which is recommended. You want, user to change the password when they try to sign in, right? For the very first time. All right. So I think that should be it over here. So basically what we are doing is we are creating a user called demo user. I'm giving him AWS management console access, and then he is going to change the password when he's trying to sign in for the very first time. And then click on next. And then you can add some policies. Okay. So I don't have any group created yet, but it's okay. You can also attach policies. If you want to copy credential from existing user, you can also do that as well. In fact, if you see my another existing user called DevOps user, the user already has this policies, right? So if you want, you can also do that as well. But let me actually show you how you can from the scratch. So let's go here. So basically, this is where you can attach policies, right? So you can kind of give some level of access for the user that we are actually trying to create. Since we are going to do a lot of lab exercises using that demo user, so let's go ahead and then give him the highest privilege. So this is, you have to be a bit careful with this. Okay, and you can imagine, right, how many policies he already has. So basically it's kind of a, like a super user, right, if you can call in Linux environment, right? So that's what it is. Okay, so let's go ahead and then give him the administrator access. But like I said, be careful with it. And then go ahead and then click on create user. So that's it, right? So now user have been created. So you can log in using this information, right? Isn't it? So you can log in, into AWS console using this URL, and then this is a username, and then this is the password. Okay. Or you can also, send as an email as well. Okay. So if you want to, let's say you are a AWS admin and you are kind of managing this. So now new team member is joining. You can also kind of, set up the user account and then email all the signing, instructions. So now let's go ahead and log in into AWS console using the demo user that we have created. So obviously I'm going to enter the username. Then I will go ahead and then enter the password that was created during the user creation. So as soon as I enter, I have to immediately change the password, isn't it? And then do not click on sign in using root user email. We don't want to use that. There you go. So as soon as you enter the old password, it is asking you to change to the new password. So I'm going to go ahead and then click on confirm password change, continue to sign in. Fantastic, right? So now we are able to log in into AWS console using demo user. So now the demo user have administrative access. So we should be able to create resources in AWS cloud. So now let's quickly talk about something related to AWS account. Okay, so what are the things that you need to be aware of it? Okay, so first thing first, you need to keep an eye on your AWS billing. Okay, so I know I have created a demo user that may not have a permission to access billing, but you can actually log in into AWS console. But you can log in into AWS console using your root user, and then you can always keep an eye on your AWS billing, and then you can also click on the view bill. So this will kind of tell you, what is your, every month bill. Okay. So please do make sure that, you keep an eye on your AWS billing. And then another important thing is whenever you are creating EC2 instances, so make sure, you stop your EC2 instances when not in use. Okay, so whenever you are not using any of your EC2 instances, so make sure you stop your EC2 instances so that you will not be actually charged. I understand we are under AWS. I understand we are using AWS free tier account, but you want to make sure that you are not going over the limit. Okay, fantastic. And then the next thing is, I will also talk about how you can create AWS support ticket. So click on this question mark and then click on support center. Let's say that you are working with a customer, they are completely into AWS cloud. Now your manager is asking you, hey, can you go ahead and then create some support ticket? Let's say, the team is running into some technical issue related to AWS cloud. So the team is not able to resolve the issue. So you'll have to rely on AWS cloud. So how do you create that support ticket? So this is how you would create, right? So click on the question mark and then click on support center and then click on create case. And then depending on the type of issue, right? If it is technical, you can go ahead and then, create a support ticket. So unfortunately, we would not be able to do that because I am under free tier. But let's say if something related to account or anything like that, so this is how you would actually do it, right? So for example, let's say you are running into some issue with the account activation or anything, right? You see here, general question or account verification. So you can go ahead and then, click on, select the right category, severity and so on, and then click on next step. And then you can provide the information that, related to the issue. And then you can click on next. So for example, of course, I'm not going to submit anything, but let's say I'm running into some issue, click on next. And then you also have option to resolve it, right? So you also have this option. So you can click on contact us and then, they would actually, you can kind of, have an email communication with them, or if you want to resolve immediately, you also have option when you click on next. So they will also kind of, call you and so on, right? So yeah, so basically there are so many ways you can get your issue resolved, but this is how you would actually create a support ticket with AWS cloud. All right. And then the next important thing is I'm going to show you how you can enable multi-factor authentication. So this is very, very important, right? So if you go to security credentials, and then there you go, you see here, right? So it is super important that once you create your AWS account, you need to enable multi-factor authentication. So the way you can actually do that is you click on assign MFA device, and then of course you can give a name, my iPhone or whatever it is, right? And then you can use authenticator app. So let's say if you're using a smartphone, right, you can click on show a QR code, and then you should be able to enable multi-factor authentication, and then make sure you enter a consecutive MFA code on your device, right? And then click on add. So this is how you can enable multi-factor authentication for your AWS account. Perfect. And then it is also important that you create resources under one region, right? So what does that mean? So please remember, whenever you are creating EC2 instances, or any resources for that matter, right? So you always stick with one region. Okay, you see here, right? So I'm under Ohio, so I'm going to keep under, no, actually I'm going to switch into Northern Virginia. So I'm going to keep all my, AWS resources under this region, right? So, depending on, where you live, you can, choose the region that you actually, you can choose the region that you are actually, living close by, so that, you can have all this, then you are not. So make sure you select the region that you actually live close by, so that you're not running into any network latency issues and so on, right? So yeah, and then also, if you are creating resources, in more than one region, sometimes you may forget to delete or stop, your resources. Then, you would be like double charge, right? So that's the reason why you always stick with one region, and then you create resources under single region only. Okay, again, this is we are just learning AWS cloud, and we are just using AWS free tier. So yeah, so I just want to make sure that you understand the rules in the game, right? Fantastic. So yeah, so we talked about 4 housekeeping related with the AWS cloud. We talked about AWS building. We talked about how you can create resources under one region, and then we talked about enabling multi-factor authentication, and then we also talked about how you can create support ticket in AWS cloud. Fantastic. So now let's go ahead and then create EC2 instances in AWS cloud. So we are going to create 2 EC2 instances in AWS cloud, right? As you can see here. So let's go ahead and then create, EC2 instances. So first of all, if you see here, there are various, AWS services, right? So, but again, let's start with the EC2. So EC2 is nothing but Elastic Cloud Compute. So you are going to create, virtual machines running in the AWS cloud, right? So that's what EC2 is all about. So we are going to create 2 EC2 instances, right? So we are going to create 2 EC2 instances, correct? So if you see here, one for, setting up Jenkins, and then another one is for setting up Tomcat. If you look at this diagram, so we are going to, create 2 EC2 instances, correct? One for setting up Jenkins, another one is for, setting up Tomcat. So now let's go ahead and then create 2 EC2 instances in AWS cloud. So click on launch instance, and I'm going to say my EC2. So obviously you can give any name, but let me just give this name, and then click on Ubuntu. So basically we have to select our AMI. So AMI is nothing but it's a template created by AWS cloud, which has your entire, operating system, and then all the libraries, along with it, right? So it's like this, right? Let's say you want to set up Windows 95. I'm talking about, 20 or 25 years ago, right? So you would have a hard copy, right? You would have like a CD, isn't it? If you wanted to set up Windows 95, because you would have a bare metal hardware, and then you are trying to set up, right? So you would be using that CD-ROM in order to install. But here, everything is running virtually, right? So the way AWS is going to help you to create, all this, servers and whatnot. So you would be just, creating, you would be using this AMI. So basically AMI is nothing but it's a kind of a template. So what is AMI? So AMI is a template that contains your entire operating system, application server, and then all the libraries, put together, right? It's kind of a, a read-only template, which is created by, AWS. So all you have to do is, depending on the type of operating system or type of server that you're going to use, you would be, going ahead and then selecting the respective AMI. That's all you have to do. Okay. For example, let's say if you wanted to set up Red Hat, OS, you would be, selecting that AMI, right? Or if you wanted to configure Ubuntu operating system, you would be selecting the Ubuntu AMI, right? That's all you have to do. But I'm going to configure Ubuntu. So let's go ahead and then select Ubuntu here. And I'm going to select Ubuntu Server 22.04. You can also choose Ubuntu 24, but I see that there are some challenges in using Docker Compose. So, but I'm going to go ahead with Ubuntu Server 22.04. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and then select tier.small. But again, we are going to configure Jenkins and Tomcat, right? So this is actually good enough. But again, I leave it to you guys, depending on your budget, you can select, but generally speaking, at least 4 GB of, memory is recommended, but it's okay for now. I think we can start with a t.small. Okay. So we are selecting Ubuntu server 22.04. So don't select the SQL one, select only this one. Okay. And then we need to create SSH keys. So basically, so this is very important, right? Let's say you are creating EC2 instances in AWS cloud. So you're going to connect to that, your server, right? So how do you think you can connect to your EC2 instance? So we are going to connect to that EC2 instance in a secure manner. If you look at this diagram, this is you and then this is your laptop. So we are creating a couple of EC2 instances in the AWS cloud, correct? So we are going to connect from a laptop into our EC2 instance. So we need to connect in a secure manner, right? So that's the reason why we are creating SSH keys. And then if you also see here, the way you can connect your EC2 instance in a secure manner is you have to make sure port number 22 is open. Okay. And then the default port number for Jenkins or Tomcat is port number 8080. So we also need to open port number 8080 as well, in the security group, right? So these two would be like a firewall rules. All right. So let's go ahead and then create SSH keys. So click on create key pair. So I'm going to give some sensible name. I'm going to give my SSH keys. Okay, so I'm going to leave this as a perm since I'm actually using MacBook. So I'm fine with this. In fact, even if you are using Windows machine, you can also leave it like this if you're going to use git bash in order to securely connect. So that is fine as well. So let's click on create key pair. So as you can see here, my SSH keys have been downloaded. Wonderful. And then like I said, click on edit. So we need to configure our firewall rule. So you can see here, right? So this is a security group name. And then make sure, you have this auto assign, right? So that you can access EC2 instance publicly, right? And then like I said, we are going to open up 2 different port numbers. So port number 22 is open by default. So we are going to add additional port number. So let me add 8080. And then this is okay. I know it kind of gives us a warning, but if you think that, hey, you know what, I don't want to access this from external, I want to access only from my IP address, you can also give my IP address here as well, right? So that you can access only from your local machine. Same thing over here, but I would not recommend this. Why? Because sometimes what would happen is your IP address may change after every restart, right? So purely depending on your internet service provider. Okay. So I know this is for demo purpose, so I'm fine with this. All right. And then, the root volume, I'm going to give 18 GB. So that should be fine. So if you look at the summary section, so basically we are creating 2 EC2 instances, correct? So we are creating 2 EC2 instances, and then we are selecting Ubuntu server 22.04. We are choosing this AMI, Ubuntu server 22.04, and then the instance type is .small, and then volume is 18 GB of memory. And this is our storage volume, right? And this is our storage volume. Perfect. Click on launch instance. So as you can see here, this is going to create 2 EC2 instances. All right. So now you can see here, these 2 are my EC2 instances up and running, right? They are in the form of, coming up. Let's click on refresh. Okay. I know it's going to take, a couple of seconds for EC2 instances, to be in the ready stage. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly, give some name, right? I want to change the name of the EC2 instance. So let's call this as a Jenkins, and then I'm going to call this as Tomcat. Fantastic. Okay. So now we can go ahead and then connect to one of our EC2 instance, right, to begin with. Okay. So let's also go back to our presentation here. I just want to make sure we are covering everything, right? So we have created two EC2 instances. So now we are going to connect to our first EC2 instance and then configure Jenkins. So let's start with that. So how do you connect to Jenkins EC2 instance? So click on here and then click on connect. And then this kind of shows there are 4 different ways you can connect, right? Since we have already created SSH keys. So I'm going to connect using SSH keys, right? And then click on example. So I'm going to open my item. So keep it like this, so it is easier for you to do the lab exercise. If you remember, we have downloaded keys under downloads directory, right? And we can also verify that if our keys are there or not. So what is our key name? My SSH keys. So I'm going to go ahead and then say my SSH. You can see here, this is our SSH keys. But if you see here, run this command if necessary to make sure key is not publicly viewable, right? So if you see here, this has both read and write, but it has to be a read only. So you can copy this command and then execute. So now if you go and type ls-il, there you go. You see here, now it is read only, right? And this is only needed for your MacBook. This is not needed if you are actually connecting to your EC2 instance from your Windows machine, right? So you don't need to execute that command. Okay, and then let's copy this example. So this is how you're going to connect, right? SSH, and then you're going to give the key name, and then Ubuntu is the username, and then this is your public IP address of your Jenkins EC2 instance. So copy this and then click on yes. Fantastic, there you go. So now we are actually connected to our EC2 instance running in AWS cloud. So if I can take you back to this diagram. So look at this diagram, right? So this is you, this is your laptop. So we are able to securely connect to our EC2 instance running in AWS cloud. Fantastic. So now what is the next step? The next step is, we need to go ahead and then install Jenkins on this EC2 instance, right? So how do you do that? So let me take you guys to Google. So let's type install Jenkins on Ubuntu, right? Obviously you're going to get a lot of results, but if you look at the first one, so this is actually a Jenkins website itself, isn't it? And then of course, right? So Jenkins can be installed so many different ways. You all can see that, right? You can use Docker, you can use Kubernetes, or you can also, perform commands one by one. You just need to kind of, see what is the best option for you. So for our demo purpose, I'm going to configure a very simple approach. So you can see here, right? So if you also look at the prerequisite, you need to have Java installed. So if you click on Java requirements, so you can see here, right? So we are going to probably go with the LTS release, and you can clearly see here, you need to have Java 17 or above. And then of course, if you go back and then you can also click on the operating system. So yes, we have configured Ubuntu 22.04. So basically these are all the, installation instructions, right? So you just have to install Java and then you can perform these commands. But don't worry, I have already captured all the information, in one note. So I'm going to go ahead and then install everything one by one. So let me first start with setting up the host name, because yes, we have multiple EC2 instances. Sometimes you may not know, which EC2 instance you are actually working on, right? So through your git bash or item and so on. So I wanted to change the host name. Let me exit after you set up the host name and then log in back again. So now you're going to see the host name got updated. Fantastic. So now let's start with the APT updates, as this is a brand new EC2 instance. So it is a good practice to make sure you have latest, libraries, everything is up to date. And then we will go ahead and then configure JDK 17 or Java 17. So how do you do that? You can copy paste this command. So like we saw, one of the prerequisites for setting up Jenkins is you need to have Java installed. All right, and then let's quickly verify our version of Java. Fantastic, all good. And then let's also go ahead and then install Maven as well, because we are going to perform Java related build. So Maven is one of the popular build tool for building Java-based application. Of course, you can also use other build tools as well, such as Ant or Gradle, but we are going to work on Maven. Fantastic. So you can see here, so that is a Maven version. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and then configure Jenkins. So obviously, right, we also saw the similar instructions in the Jenkins website itself. So basically, you are downloading the key from Jenkins website, and then you are appending the Debian package repo address to the system, right? So that is going to create an entry to this particular file. You can also see that as well, right? And then after that, you have to perform update. So that is important. So update is done. Let's go ahead and then install Jenkins. So just go ahead and then type that command. So that should take care of setting up Jenkins. All right, fantastic. So now let's go ahead and then access Jenkins from the browser. So basically, all you have to do is copy the DNS name, go to browser, and then put the default port number for Jenkins. There you go. So if you guys remember, so the way Jenkins can be, so now if you see here, what Jenkins have done is, so now you will be getting this particular page. So all you have to do is, copy this command and then try to get the admin password. So now you will be getting this page. So all you have to do is, go ahead and then copy this command, and then you just have to go back to your git bash and then go ahead and then enter this command, but make sure you put sudo cat before. There you go. So that's it, right? So that is your initial Jenkins password. So let's go ahead and then put that, click on continue, and then go ahead and then, install the plugins. So if you look at the CI/CD process flow diagram that we have discussed earlier, so the way Jenkins is going to integrate with each and every tool is by using the plugins. Okay. So in order for Jenkins to integrate with Tomcat or SonarQube or Nexus or Jacoco or GitHub, any third-party tool that you want to integrate with Jenkins, you have to install those plugins. Let's go ahead and then install all suggested plugins that comes out of the box from Jenkins. All right, so now let's go ahead and then set up the initial admin user. So generally speaking, you don't have to do this way at work, because at work you will be given a network ID, right? So using that ID, you're going to log in into your Jenkins, because your Jenkins would be integrated with some kind of Active Directory servers, right? But for now, you can just set up initial username, and then you don't have to give your email address. You can give some random email address. And click on save and continue. Click on save and finish. And then click on start using Jenkins. So that's it, right? That's how you can configure Jenkins. And let's move on to the next step, which is nothing but configuring Tomcat, correct? Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my AWS console. I'm going to open up one more, git bash window or item window. Let's go to downloads and then try to connect to Tomcat EC2 instance, isn't it? And you don't have to execute this command, because we have already executed the change mod 400 command. That is just done only once. Fantastic. So now I'm actually connected to my Tomcat EC2 instance. So how you can configure Tomcat on this EC2 instance? So again, right, there are so many ways you can actually do it. I have already captured all the instructions in one node, so I'm going to go ahead and then do that. So let's start with setting up the host name. All right, and then let's go ahead and then perform exit and then log back again. So now we should see that the host name got changed to Tomcat. Fantastic. And then let's go ahead and then perform update. Okay. So now you can configure Tomcat either using apt package, or you can also go ahead and then download Tomcat installables. It may come as a tar file or whatever, but I'm okay with this approach. So I'm going to install this way. So now as you can see here, Tomcat is being installed. So now we need to configure a Tomcat admin app. So I'm going to go ahead and then perform this particular command. This is going to configure Tomcat admin app. Fantastic. And then if you wanted to see where Tomcat got installed on Ubuntu 22.04, this is the installation directory. Okay. So what we are going to do is we need to set up a user in Tomcat user.xml file, because eventually we are going to integrate, right? We are going to deploy from Jenkins into Tomcat. So we are going to build a war file and then we are going to deploy that inside Tomcat. So for that, we have to configure some user credential. So we are going to go ahead and then edit this file, edit this Tomcat user file under conf folder. And then we are going to go ahead and then add an entry to this file. So be careful when you actually edit this file. So basically what we are trying to do is I wanted to create a user, as a Tomcat as a username and then password as a password. But again, you can configure, let's say if you want to put some password, yes, you can also go ahead and then put some complex password. But again, I leave it to you depending on the password policy of your company. But the main thing is, yes, you are creating a username, you're setting up a user, and then you are giving this privilege, manage a script role, right? So that's all. So now let me come out of this file. So I'm actually using a VA editor, but feel free to use editor whichever you are comfortable. You can also use nano editor as well. If you're using VA editor, you have to press insert, which is nothing but IR insert, and then make your changes, and then escape, and then shift : WQ. So W is for writing and then Q is for quitting, and then enter. That's it. Okay. So now we made some configuration changes. In order for the configuration changes to take into effect immediately, let's go ahead and then restart Tomcat service. And then let's also quickly go ahead and then verify the Tomcat service is up and running or not. Fantastic. So now you all can see the service is up and running, right? So now let's try to access Tomcat in the browser. Try to get the DNS name of Tomcat and then go ahead and then enter in the browser and then :8080. There you go, guys. So this confirms that Tomcat has been successfully initialized. So now let's get back into our agenda. Let's just make sure that, we kind of covered each and every line item here. So we kind of talked about our approach for the lab exercise, isn't it? We also talked about what is the problem that we are trying to solve. So I was kind of giving you an example that you're working with agile team where they don't have any automation in place, and then as a DevOps engineer, how you can bring your DevOps practices and so on. In order to start off with, we are going to first implement CI and CD. So we discussed what is CI and CD, and then we understood the CI/CD process flow diagram, and then we wanted to obviously set up our CI server as well as our web server. So for that, obviously, right, we need to have account created in AWS cloud, and then we created and we logged into AWS cloud using that user account. We are not using root account. And then we talked about housekeeping related to AWS account, right? And then we created 2 EC2 instances, one for setting up Jenkins, another one is for setting up Tomcat. I hope this lecture was really useful. I'm really looking forward to see you guys in the next lecture.